Hello everybody, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the latest episode of The Real Housewives of New Jersey, being season 13, episode 3. Let's get right into it, but before we do, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of my videos. But let's get right into this episode. This episode begins with a continuation of Melissa and Teresa's fight during Danielle's party, and they start to calm down a little bit, and Teresa says, if you want to be a bridesmaid, you can. And Melissa says, no, it's okay. I feel like that was a little bit of her pride. And that kind of clears the air, though. And they hug it out, and Melissa claims that it'll be the last time she talks about it. All I was thinking was, okay, let's see how long that lasts. But it's days later. We see some brief B footage of the women doing different things with their families. But they focus more on Dolores for this first scene, who she's with her new boyfriend. Frank wasn't able to do the calendar photo shoot last time because he was sick, but they're going to be taking some pictures of him now that he's well. So they're at Dolores' house. Like I said, he is better. Frank arrives. Frank and Pauley, who is Dolores' new boyfriend, they're being cool with each other. And Frank even invites him to guys' night with all the other husbands, which I thought that was great for him to be including him. But it's always going to be a little bit awkward, and you can tell that Frank still loves Dolores to some extent, so that's probably why it's also a little bit more awkward. But they go outside of Dolores' house where they're doing this photo shoot, and he's dressed as a bunny, and they're having a hell of a laugh seeing him dressed like that. But overall, it was a nice light scene. But next, we have Miss Margaret, who has a lunch with Jackie and Melissa. What a group, right? The first thing that Jackie brings up is that she wants to know why Danielle didn't invite her. And they tell her the reason, which is that Jackie was looking at her up and down. And Jackie says, you know what? Yeah, I was looking at her up and down because she was dressed horribly. But she kind of has an issue that Danielle didn't tell her that she was bothered by it, and that instead she just didn't invite her. But they begin to talk about Jennifer Aydin, who according to Margaret is, quote, on a downward spiral, and the other two agree, and they think that that is the reason why she has been acting so foolish lately. Then there's a scene with Rachel and her husband. They're with their daughter, and they're going to be taking her to a photo shoot, their 2-year-old daughter, and Rachel is just in awe seeing her daughter, and she asks her husband if he would like to have another baby, which takes him a little bit aback. It's sort of a sore subject for her, though, and she starts tearing up because she shares that she had a miscarriage, and after that she wasn't able to get pregnant again without IVF. Her husband says that he would rather maybe wait 1 more year, but she wants it now, especially because they have 5 embryos waiting. Next up, there's a scene with Teresa. She's with her daughter Gia, and Louis walks in. The wedding is approaching, which is super exciting, but Teresa does bring up the argument that Melissa and her had about the engagement debacle and the seating or whatever. And this is a pretty strong scene because then Teresa's other daughter joins, and the girls are very upset at their aunt and uncle, which I don't blame them at all because they were really hurt by hearing the things that Melissa and Joe have been saying in their podcasts and in other places. They were not disrespectful though, which I do appreciate because I do feel like they owe them some sort of respect because they are their family, but they do let Teresa know that it's so unfortunate that they're acting nothing like family members. So they're pretty much, drawing their line. The next thing that we see is Danielle and Melissa going over to a store, and they're shopping, they're catching up, they're filling each other up a little bit. And Melissa tells her that Jackie was pretty upset that she wasn't invited, and she also carries the bone about what Jackie said about her outfit. So that makes Danielle not feel bad for not inviting her now that she's hearing what she said. But they do start talking about some more important stuff. Danielle had a big issue with her brother, very similar to what these people are going through. He was also planning a wedding, and he kicked Danielle out of it, and it's been 2 years since they have not spoken, and Danielle thinks that it was really the wife that is the one that is the problem, and that definitely hits a nerve with Melissa, and says she tries to justify herself all of a sudden because she feels like by Danielle saying that it was her brother's wife that is the problem, she is saying, well, I do encourage Joe and Teresa to be tighter, again trying to cover herself and be like, no, it's not me. Then Jennifer finally appears in this episode. She shows up with her kids and her husband. They have a little scene like that, and then she has a chat with Bill and tells him some of the things that Margaret said to her. And she says to him that it's bothering her, and she even asks him, am I self-reflective, as Margaret mentioned? And he gives like a very long-winded answer, and in a way it's kind of as if he was agreeing with Margaret, but like without actually saying that he agreed with Margaret, if that makes sense. And that got her very bothered. Danielle then has a scene where she invites her mom and dad over, which, by the way, her parents look very young. And Danielle brings up the issue with her brother again. Apparently the mother doesn't even talk to him. It's only the dad who talks to him, and he starts crying because he really wants everyone to be together. And I felt really bad for him in that moment, but he says that he has faith and thinks that this will pass. So that was pretty emotional. Next is Melissa at her house. Then her mom and her sister come over. So then they're all outside. Joe, Melissa, the mom, the sister, and the kid. They're sitting around eating salad. And then they start talking about the wedding. It turns out that Teresa didn't invite Melissa's family, as in her mom and her sister. And then they dismiss the kids because apparently they don't want them to hear. But we all know those kids know what's going on. And then Joe begins to add fuel to the fire and saying things like, how could Teresa not invite you guys when you guys were there next to my father when he was dying? And they're suggesting maybe you should talk to Louis or try to do something, because they did seem a little bit bothered that they weren't invited. In a way, I do understand why they would feel a little bit upset about that, because like, especially like from where I come from, my culture, it's like in a wedding everybody's invited, you know what I mean? Like every cousin, every uncle, that's not really an issue. But I see both sides, and like I said, they encourage him to talk to Louis, and he says, well, you know, we're gonna have guys night, so maybe we'll see what happens. And then it's finally the final scenes of the episode are this day where the men are hanging out. I will say they have a great bond. The husbands of the new girls are also there, and they're having fun, taking shots, eating. It actually turns out that Pauley didn't come, which kind of bothered Frank, and he takes the opportunity to share with everybody that he misses the dynamic that he had with Dolores, and that it's really weird now, especially since he doesn't get to see her that much anymore. And he indeed admits that he does miss Dolores. So besides Pauley, the only one not there yet is Louis. Bill asks Joe, why not give him a chance? So then that kind of sets Joe off, and he says that they have been horrible to them, and that he is a POS. And as he's like, you know, spouting all this hatred, walks in Louis, and like Joe is like literally mid-sentence, so he shuts up, obviously. But oh my, the tension in that room when Louis walks in. So Louis comes in with a great attitude, you know. He gives them some good ideas about what they could do for his bachelor party, because somebody does mention that. And then here comes smart mouth Joe and says, well, if you do have a bachelor party, who are you going to invite? And Louis is a little bit confused by that. Joe brings up that Melissa's family was not invited. So then this becomes like a questioning, asking Louis why weren't they invited, and Joe gets mad, like too mad. He says that Melissa's family and them, they deserve respect. So Louis claps back and reminds him that respect? Well, you and Melissa went on a podcast saying that if it weren't for you all, Teresa's kids wouldn't have food to eat. So that turns into ad hominem attacks. Joe coming for Louis, saying that he's not a real man, that he's a PUSSI. And Joe says, I'll break your balls. And then he punches the table. He looks ridiculous. And he really does look like he's ready to beat up Louis. But Louis, like, they eventually calm down, and Louis says, you know what? My wife invited who she wanted, which I feel like it was as simple as that. They didn't have to be questioning him. It really comes down to what Teresa wanted, and he doesn't have to explain it. And Joe then starts playing the victim and saying, I am so hurt, in a much calmer tone. So they eventually all calm down, and Louis says, okay, I'm hearing you. If you're hurt, talk to your sister because she's hurt too. So try and fix it, And Joe says, well, I'll think about it. Really, like, it's just insane. Like I said, looks ridiculous. What I will say that I didn't like was all the guys sort of like questioning Louis about it. Also, like, how could you not invite his in-laws? Like, I don't think that was their place. But that's all we got this episode. I am looking forward for next week because by the promo, it looks like the new girls are going to be coming for some of the ones that have already been there. So they are going to eat that up. I can't wait. But let me know your thoughts about this episode. What do you think about Joe and Louis going at it? And whose side are you on? How do you think Louis handled it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. And I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a great one. Bye.